We Are Lonely is recorded across a number of Aboriginal lands, including Gumbaynggirr Nation and the Eora Nations. We would like to pay our respects to the elders and custodians of these lands. We would also like to pay our respects to the custodians of the land on which you are now listening.
Isolating myself has been a habit, and being lonely, I guess, is also it's become a habit for me.
I think loneliness is something I've definitely struggled with.
Everyone feels lonely at some stage in their life.
When we don't talk about it, when it's left unsaid, that's when it can start to spiral and build up and turn into something much greater.
And that has adverse effects on your mental and physical health.
Connection is everything. As humans and as mammals, like, we require that connection.
That anxiety, that trigger of loneliness that we get when we don't have that is actually really important, because it's that reminder of, okay, there's something missing here, we need to reconnect.
So loneliness to me is a question rather than a situation that you can't get out of.
It seems as quickly as we're filling this planet, we're each becoming more isolated. 1 in 3 Australians is experiencing loneliness, but it's a worldwide issue. The UK now has a Minister of Loneliness, and the US Surgeon General has declared loneliness a health epidemic.
There's a big shift towards individualism and people wanting to pursue what they perceive as making them happy.
When you picture loneliness, you might think of an elderly person sitting alone. However, the idea that only older people experience loneliness is a massive misconception.
I think we know from surveys internationally and now in Australia that loneliness is actually often reported, not simply by the elderly and the obviously physically isolated, but increasingly by young people. The period in which loneliness actually peaks in many of those surveys is amongst young adults.
It makes a lot of sense in that, that is a time where there's a lot of radical change and transformation going on, and there's a lot around, figuring out who am I, what is it that I'm doing in this world, how am I contributing, and is it okay to be who I really want to be?
This is different to other podcasts you might have heard. I think of it as a documentary reality podcast with heart. We've connected 4 people in their 20s with mentors who are helping them build strategies to reconnect.
Not only was I lonely because I didn't have any friends, I was lonely because I didn't know who I was, because I'd had everything taken away from me that made me who I was.
I just want to stay inside. Yeah, people are like, do you want to go out? I'm like, do we have to?
Over the next 6 episodes, you'll get to know these 4 amazing people and follow their path to reconnection.
I'm not comfortable or confident. I'm just trying to figure it all out.
Still end up prioritizing work over spending time with people I love or something like this.
This is We Are Lonely, and I'm Gemma Spegg. This show is supported by Medibank.
My name's Holly, I'm 24 years old and I live down the coast in Victoria. So I guess what drew me to the podcast was probably, I think, the opportunity for connection.
G'day, my name's Charity and I would like to pay my respects to the elders on the land that we walk upon today. I have been longing for the last 2 years for something, because I was praying. Not necessarily praying, but...
Yeah, just that spiritual sort of, not necessarily from a Christian perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely not from a Christian perspective.
Higher self.
Yeah, higher self.
Yeah, I get that.
Just because I've been so lost.
Yeah, so my name's Aleks. I'm 26. I feel relieved to be to be part of a project like this, because I often feel like when I am burnt out or when I feel lonely, the things that I do often increase these negative feelings. But I think that there's a way out of it, and it's quite close by.
So, my name is Tim. I'm 24, and for me it's important having that representation even as niche as a half Asian, Australian, queer person in Melbourne, it's nice knowing that having that out there, maybe someone else can resonate with that.
Before we get into things, I want to let you know that being about loneliness, this podcast gets personal and vulnerable. We'll be exploring sometimes difficult themes, including stolen generations, intergenerational trauma, and body image. If this raises any issues for you, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 or go to reachout.com, where there are dedicated resources for young people. We've worked hard to create situations that will be safe and comfortable for everyone involved. This is Holly and her mum talking about being part of the show.
So, how do you feel about me participating in this podcast with everything that I guess I've gone through over the past few years?
I think I'm proud. I think I am watching how you have persevered and how you are allowing yourself to be in an even more vulnerable space, putting yourself out there to share your story. And I think you've got an interesting story to tell, and I think it's going to be something that will resonate with people, and I think that it's a positive thing.
Do you have any concerns about me doing this podcast?
I think anytime you put yourself out there, there's going to be judgment. And I think that, I'm sure that's something that you thought about yourself. Concerns about how people will perceive your story and you, because they don't know the full story. I think that's always the case because you're only seeing, such a small clip of your journey. So I think that's probably my main concern. But I just feel that the positives far outweigh the negatives.
I've studied psychology and I have my own podcast about psychology in our 20s. When I heard about this project, I knew it was something that I had to be a part of because I think loneliness impacts people in their 20s very differently, and it's something that I feel really passionate about. To make sure we're on top of the complexities, we've also reached out to people who have researched this topic for a long time.
So loneliness is a really interesting kind of concept. I'm Professor Ian Hickey. I'm the Co-Director of Health and Policy at the Brain and Mind Centre of the University of Sydney. So it goes back to a fundamental about mental health. Mental health is really underpinned by two concepts. One's personal autonomy, being able to make choices for yourself, live the life that you choose, go where you want, enjoy good health, enjoy good education, enjoy good social opportunities. But the other is actually staying connected. They're not really opposites. You need to do both. You need to have a capacity to live your own life, but you also need to stay socially connected. And many would argue that in many Western cultures, progressively, due to our wealth and our good health and our opportunity, we're getting that balance increasingly wrong, with an overemphasis on just pursuing your own goals and less emphasis on staying connected in relationships, in situations that really matter, that provide mutual support, that provide capacity to cope, that actually assist us to live more productive and better emotional lives.
My name is Dr. Lisa Mundy and I'm Programme Lead of the Longitudinal Study of Australian Children at AFE, the Australian Institute of Family Studies. I think in terms of loneliness, obviously COVID has been a big disruptor for us as a society and as individuals. And I think it really highlighted how much, as humans and individuals, we really need connection, and we really, we need that, to meet with others, to have that time with other people. How much connection, varies from individuals to individuals, and how much they kind of are energized by that connection. We're thinking about kind of extroverts who kind of, thrive on that connection and want to be out and about and kind of with people all the time, versus introverts who need the connection but need some sort of downtime as well to kind of recharge their batteries. But the reality is that, that there's a continuum, and that we're all somewhere on that continuum, from kind of needing a lot of connection to needing some, but we all need connection. Like, that's part of being humans, and part of being mammals, that we need to have that connection.
Let's get into it and get to know Holly, Charity, Tim and Aleks, and of course their mentors.
If you said, oh, well, I'm not the picture of what loneliness typically or stereotypically looks like, I think that maybe just what the majority of people look like that are lonely are similar to me. It's that longing for connection and for deeper, sense of community that so many people don't have. I have an amazing relationship with my mum and my grandparents, and I have a beautiful partner. I've got pets, and I have a few amazing friends, but I think it's important to shine a light on the fact that you can have connection, and it's really normal to have people in your life and still feel lonely, to still feel isolated. But not even saying I feel lonely, it's like reframing it to go, I want more connection, or I want a bigger community. I want a bigger tribe of people. Just after I finished high school, I was 17 and I experienced some pretty significant trauma. And I guess as a result of that, I developed PTSD, and then I sort of pushed it down and didn't really address it. And then I guess as a result, developed chronic fatigue. But yeah, it was really debilitating. And so from 17 until 22, I was pretty much bedbound. And yeah, I spent those years just in bed and seeing doctors, and I spent some time in an inpatient clinic because I couldn't look after myself. And I guess that was why I wanted to potentially be on a podcast, to be able to share my story, and for people that are experiencing illness of any kind or grief. I think that to be able to see in someone that it's okay to be in that situation and you aren't alone, because that's all you feel. And on top of that, you lose connection because people are living life. People are wanting to go out and go to nice dinners and have a few drinks and go have a dance, and you can't do that. And so when you can't do that, people stop reaching out, and it just reinforces how you already feel about yourself. But you come out the other side, and it's probably not going to be what you want it to look like at whatever age you are. And for me, it was 23, and I was the loneliest I've ever been in my life.
This habit of loneliness and isolation can be broken with a little help.
All right. Hello. My name is Tessa, and I am a counsellor in private practice.
Tessa has also made some powerful art installations where people shared their stories of being lonely.
And I guess what I've really learned about loneliness, both from a personal perspective but then also through my work, is that it's not obviously just about necessarily a social isolation. And actually the more sort of intense feeling of disconnect that I think I felt was largely with myself at different points in my life. And so, yeah, I guess that's sort of why I felt so personally motivated to be sort of doing something on loneliness, like the exhibition. But the whole point of it as well was to kind of really try and reduce some of the shame and stigma that surrounds it.
Well, it's just not sexy, is it? Like, it's just, I think it's not though, like, everyone started talking about so many other aspects of mental health, like, anxiety and things like that. But loneliness is just, it's not sexy. Like, no one wants to talk about it. And you're right, like, the shame's huge around it. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, I think that's why people sort of hide it. And, it's not normalised.
It's interesting though, because we think other people are going to judge us.
Yeah, 100%.
Or ridicule us. But actually what happens when we open up about loneliness is that it's a driver for connection.
Really?
Yeah, so it's when we say, I've actually been feeling lonely, most people will respond to that with, how can I help? Or
yeah,
what's going on for you? Or, yeah, I felt it too.
Yeah.
It's as opposed to, oh, you're weird, get away from me.
I feel like I feel like if I said it to someone, they'd get secondhand embarrassment for me, being like, I feel really lonely. But yeah, it's so interesting, like, to actually know that that's a thing, like that it's not an actual, like, the stigma's not there. It's actually just us perceiving it to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to know.
And it's especially so among young people.
Yeah,
the stigma is even greater among young people, because I guess it's that feeling of like, you know, I should have friends, I should be like this, what's wrong with me? Yeah. We have so much judgment, I guess, when we feel lonely.
I think that from being unwell in my past and then having had COVID, and also even just being an only child, isolating myself has been a habit, and being lonely, I guess, is also it's become a habit for me. It's just easier for me to isolate myself since having been, you know, now that I'm better and I'm well, I still kind of feel like that version of myself. And so, yeah.
There is a real tendency, becomes a cycle, loneliness, when we feel isolated. So then we isolate ourselves. But in that time, it's very common for us to then build up a sense of just not being able to totally trust the world as much anymore. Yeah. And so then it's hard to then put ourselves back out in it.
Yeah.
And so then we isolate ourselves. And so then it becomes this self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah.
That can feel really hard to get out of.
Yeah. And it becomes comfortable, like being isolated it's become my normal, so it's now comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, the discomfort is putting ourselves out there.
Yeah, that would be very uncomfortable.
Loneliness is a really sort of, you know, innate part of our biology, and actually it's been key to our ability to evolve as a species over time. You know, we learned a long time ago, our ancestors learned that if we were separated from the tribe, then we're at more risk of being eaten by a tiger. And so, you know, that dependency on, you know, collectivism and that tribe nature of, you know, being connected to people and having a clear sense of purpose with each other, you know, that was really important. And so that anxiety, that feeling that we get, that trigger of loneliness that we get when we don't have that, is actually really important, because it's that reminder of, okay, there's something missing here, we need to reconnect. Just like, you know, when we're hungry, you know, we need to feed our bodies, or thirsty, we need to drink. But because we are afraid of it, we're afraid of what it might mean, when we don't talk about it, when it's left unsaid, that's when it can start to spiral and build up and turn into something much greater. A lot of the way that we're speaking about loneliness and how we're defining it is emotional loneliness, social isolation, and existential loneliness. And the way I kind of categorize those is disconnect from others, disconnect from ourselves, and disconnect from the world around us. What I've tended to notice is that disconnect from self, that loneliness in relation to not feeling like they really know who they really are, or feeling like they can be who they really are, that to me has shown up a lot more among those that are young. And I think it makes a lot of sense in that, you know, that is a time where, you know, there's a lot of radical change and transformation going on, and there's a lot around, you know, figuring out who am I, what is it that I'm doing in this world, how am I contributing, and is it okay to be who I really want to be?
This question around being who I want to be, whether I can show up as myself, it's a universal question. It also explains part of why people in their 20s are at a higher risk of feeling lonely. We all feel more lonely during times of transition, grief, moving out, graduating university, having a child, retiring. And a lot of these major life transitions have changed, Only a couple of generations ago, the transition from adolescent to adult was pretty short. By about 23, most people had the hallmarks and responsibilities of being an adult. They had the house, they had a career, a life partner. But these days, ask most 27-year-olds if they feel like an adult, and you will probably get a pause. So this time of self-discovery, of transition and uncertainty is elongated, and that makes for a longer period of feeling disconnected and alone. We also can't talk about loneliness without talking about discrimination. Because of discrimination and prejudice, this issue of isolation is worse for some people compared to others. 77% of young people who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community are experiencing loneliness.
To understand why a queer person is more likely to be lonely, you have to kind of go back to every queer person's childhood and look at their origin story. And obviously all of us are very different, but the one thing we have in common is that the world is very straight.
Sean Zepps shares stories about parenting and mental health and about being queer. He has a podcast, he's on Instagram. He's also written a book about his parenting experience called Not Like Other Dads. And he's also one of our mentors.
Queer people, our stories are not always represented in the media. Our love is not highlighted in movies. Our heartache is not often the subject of great television shows. And so when you're a young queer person, it's really hard to feel like your problems are not problems that are worthy of being told and discussed and picked apart and worked on. And so if you are a young person, and this is not just if you're gay, but if you are a young man on this planet or a non-binary person who is not the Aussie definition of masculinity, then your childhood is a little more difficult, that's for sure. And people are going to absolutely lob terrible words at you. And that shapes your desire to be authentic. That shapes the way that you talk. Is your voice too high? Is it too low? The way that you walk. Am I walking with enough masculinity? And that means that the only places where you feel like you can be yourself is usually when you're alone.
Yeah, even within the LGBTQIA+ community, there's divisions within itself.
This is Tim. He's being mentored by Sean.
There have been many times in my life where I've thought, okay, maybe I'm not masculine enough, maybe I'm not white passing enough, maybe I'm not skinny enough, maybe I'm not physically attractive enough. You know, there's so many different things that can divide people within the community.
Hello there.
Hello.
How are you?
A bit nervous, like in my mind, all that's being replayed is like, hello and welcome to the pit stop. I'm like,
this is your moment. This is your pit stop moment.
yeah.
I'm nervous too. I feel like anytime you're meeting someone for the first time,
It's kind of like a blind date. I'm like, is he gonna like me? What is it gonna be like? Is it gonna be weird?
it's totally like a date. Vice versa. I felt the exact same way this morning. You're like, okay, I'm meeting someone for the first time. How much of my life am I going to share? How deep are we going to go?
Yeah.
One of the things I love to do when I'm talking to people, just in my real life, like not even professionally, is understand who they were before they got to the conversation, right? It's easy to dive right in, like very, very deep into like the present, but I don't really know a lot about you. Where were you born?
So actually, I was born in Thailand.
Where in Thailand?
In a province called Ratchaburi, which is about 2 hours west of Bangkok.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love Thailand so much.
Yeah, so that's like my mum's hometown and my family's hometown. So yeah.
Wow. And when did you move to Australia?
3 months old. So
okay.
yeah, I've
Boom.
grown up here. Yeah.
Wow. And is
Yeah.
this straight to Perth or somewhere else in Australia?
Not straight to Perth.
Okay. And so Perth for your whole life, your whole adolescence?
Yeah, pretty much from 0 all the way through to, when did I move to Melbourne? 21, 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you look back at your pre-Melbourne time, do you think of it as good, happy? Like, did you enjoy growing up in Perth?
Yeah, I think like the good thing about, for me personally, was when I was 18, you know, I graduated high school, went to uni. I feel like I was able to put in so much into discovering my queer identity.
Yeah.
You know, and that meant for me being able to meet a lot of different people, create like my own chosen family, being able to do just different things, and I think dedicate a lot to developing my identity. Yeah.
Laugh and show me, laugh and show me the way.
So Tim is in the midst of finding his people, his tribe and his passions, and then he moves to Melbourne.
I moved here in the middle of the pandemic
Okay.
because it was after the first year, so 2021.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, Melbourne had just been through the, you know, the world's longest lockdown. That's not going to happen again. And it happened again.
No. What was that like for you?
I had moved into a little studio apartment. So my life was like computer, bed, bathroom, kitchen.
Did you find that I'm projecting now myself, but like, did you find that started to like shape your personality a little bit? Because it's not normal for us as humans to be in that little
100%.
routine.
And I think it still does to now. I wasn't like a crazy like clubber or partier before the pandemic, but now I just find myself like I just want to stay inside.
Yeah, I hear you.
People are like, do you want to go out? I'm like, do we have to? Do you want to just stay at home and do something else?
Is it that safety blanket of like that routine that you were talking about? That routine gets set of like, this is my safety blanket, this is my room, this is my bathroom, I have my routine, it works.
Yeah, I think so. And you just get comfortable in that space. And especially now, even after like being with some friends, I'm like, I love y'all, but I need like 5 minutes to just be on my own.
Yeah.
Recharge a little bit and then come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate. I feel like there's not a lot or enough conversations about social anxiety and like how, and I'm not saying that that's what you have, but that feeling we get sometimes when we're around people a lot, whether it's at school or at work or our family, like that need to kind of come back and recharge. But a pandemic or any form of isolation, you get much more comfortable with needing that, don't you? Like, it's almost like before you might push yourself a little bit because that's what everyone else is doing. But during the pandemic, we had a really good excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to it becomes a crutch.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm literally projecting. This is actually me talking about my experience to you, but clearly it's resonating a little bit.
No, 100%. I think gaming was the one thing that single-handedly got me through COVID. Being on the opposite side of the country from my friends in a lockdown during a pandemic, gaming was the one proper social activity that I had that got me to be able to talk to other people, that got me through all the feeling of loneliness and isolation, even if it was just for a little bit.
Tim's always loved gaming, but this intense period of physical isolation did shift his relationship with games.
Definitely, it's overtaken a large part of my life, and I've made the decision, okay, do I play a few games with a friend or on my own, or do I go to the gym today? Do I play a few games, or do I go out to this event that my friend has invited me to? And I think because it's so easy to fall into the trap of, I'm just going to stay in my room on my computer, it can really consume and take over. I think as humans, we need and we want varied social interaction. Our brain craves things to shake up routine occasionally. It likes to be challenged in different ways, to talk to different people. You need that diversity in interaction to be able to grow and develop as a person, to have new ideas come in, to be able to really fully engage with life.
Well, g'day, my name's Charity. Personally, I'm not going to lie, for me to be connected, I need to have the confidence to be connected. So used to hiding away or being at home or something like that I go outside and it causes anxiety. And like just meeting a social group, like going to a ukulele group or something like that gives me anxiety because I'm not confident with who I am as a person as of yet. My mother was a part of the stolen generation, Bomaderry homes. I basically was raised by a mother who was in survival mode a majority of her life because of what happened to her as a 3-year-old. And it wasn't because they wasn't getting looked after, and it wasn't because of anything like that. It was purely because they was Indigenous. It affects everybody. It affects the bloodline, not just the individual. For me to be able to be confident, I need to look after myself, nurture myself, respect myself, whether that be through exercise, meditating, or anything like that. Because I got to do that to feel confident within myself, appreciate the way that I look, who I am as a person, and then that way I feel I'll be able to connect with people who are on the same wavelength. Because like I said, I come from a family of like pretty hectic trauma, and I don't want to be held back by that. I want to be able to shoot for the sky.
I do want to take a moment here to let you know that we connected Charity and all our participants with a psychologist to make sure that they were safe. As well as leaning on a psychologist for advice, we also connected Charity with a very experienced mentor.
Hi Charity, it's lovely to meet you.
Hello.
My name's Deirdre Anderson, but most of my friends call me Dee. I guess my background's always been around people, particularly in the elite athlete space.
Dee is one of the biggest names in transition and sport in Australia, and she's worked with hundreds of people in times of extreme change.
So I'm hoping I've got a lot to offer, and maybe somewhere in amongst all of that, there'll be something for you. Okay, so that's my hope, anyway.
That's the goal.
So would you like to just introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your story?
Well, my name's Charity. I was brought up in a pretty large family, isolated, I suppose, at the same time. But yeah, I'm just looking for change to be able to get to where I need to go to be comfortable.
Okay.
And where I want to be.
Great. So clearly you've got a lot of strengths because you've survived whatever you've been through, and hopefully that strength will help you to get to where you want to go in the future.
Thank you. No.
Well, let's see what you think in a few weeks' time, hey? What I want to try and do with you is pull out those strengths so that you'll be able to understand your history, and you'll be able to connect, if you want to different sort of communities and country, but you'll do so in a way that's going to take your strengths forward.
Yeah.
If you lift up your left hand and look at the lines on your hand, and now look at the lines on your right, they're very different. And I often think that our right hand is the life we've been given, and our left hand is the life we choose to live. All right?
Yeah.
So you've clearly been dealt with a life or a stack of circumstances, but you still have got choice.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about.
Eager.
Good. Love it.
Self-discovery.
So that's an interest for you? Yeah.
That's my biggest interest, is because I've been so lost. It's like, where are you from? I don't know. Good question. You know what I mean?
So you're talking about that from a heritage perspective?
No, as a whole. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because, like, yeah. Here in the Gumbaynggirr country is the closest thing that I've felt to belonging somewhere. But, like, from my understanding, you got to be welcomed onto country. You know what I mean? And so, like, I haven't necessarily been welcomed onto country really anywhere. And so I was brought up in Biripi country.
Yep.
And my grandfather is from Dungari country, but I've never had, like, a sense of family there. But, like, I've been here since I was 17, and this is the closest that, like, if, you know how they say you leave and then you come home and you find your home, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go back there, this would be the place where I'd come back naturally.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody, and it's such a small town, whereas, like, I hide myself away because, like, I'm too embarrassed. Like, I go do this and it's like, I did something wrong. Oh, this person knows that person, and it's like, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be living how I'm living. Like, I would personally like my own little pad so that I can learn independence and actually be able to be comfortable using my voice with my nose, and that's okay, that's not okay.
Got it.
And that's something that has been shoved deep down. No?
So
and that's something that I want to be able to, because I'm very loud, very vocal, very, very, you know, and that's just naturally, like, just walking through the shop singing, Charity, you can't be doing that, you know what I mean? Like, you're too loud, you know? People are looking at us. It's like, you know what I mean? That it's just dimmed a lot.
Yeah.
I don't want to be dimmed anymore. Illuminate.
I'm going to write that. I don't want to be dimmed anymore. I'm going to remind you of that.
Yeah. This wall has been for, like, years and years, and it's just, I haven't had the mentor, or I haven't had, like, that stability, that crutch kind of thing. It's like me just trying my hardest to, like, climb out of a ditch.
Yep.
For years.
Well, you're out of the ditch.
Yeah, I'm just
walk.
looking around now. What direction
That's
do I
right.
take?
That's
like,
right.
Because I could go this way and be an artist, or this way and travel and self-discovery, or that way and end up back in the ditch. No, thank you. That's, like, that way for a reason.
Yeah. Well, it's clear that that's something that you don't want to do.
No, thank you.
I like to see loneliness as a junction point where at that moment in time you don't feel happy with where you're at in that space and time. And if you don't understand who you are, you get locked in a cycle of emotion and logic telling you go left, go right, stay still. So loneliness to me is a question rather than a situation that you can't get out of. And I think often the options that we're faced with, particularly young people, is they see so much potential and opportunity, but they feel disconnected from it. They don't know what they have to physically do to engage in that space.
As the world becomes richer, it might not feel like it, but it's true. We have more choice, more ability to be who we want to be. And that means we're breaking away from the society that we're embedded in. We're less rooted in our suburbs, in our families, in our cultures. That's not a bad thing. We don't want to lose our choice, but it also means we're all on our own path.
I often wonder this about my generation. I remember really vividly in high school being told again and again that we were free to do what we wanted. My name's Aleks. I'm 26. I was raised in Melbourne, in the inner northern suburbs, and I recently moved up to Sydney for a little bit. I do a bunch of different things with my life, which is nice because I enjoy the variety, but it's busy and it's stressful and it's hard to balance all of these different things. Like, I am currently writing a philosophy thesis, but I also teach a philosophy course, and I have a podcast, and I make videos, and I build websites, and I tutor. I guess when you do a number of different things, I think you do kind of isolate yourself. You have to kind of, be really committed to each of them. I enjoy the freedom of being able to do all of these different things, but I also find it really scary constantly. And so it's this, it feels like every day is complex,
I am really excited about this project because I'm able to draw on a lot of my experiences, going through my own loneliness, my own isolation.
Barry Conrad is an actor and a musician based in Sydney. You might have guessed that he's also Alex's mentor.
It can be really isolating doing what I do as well, being in the entertainment industry. Oftentimes you find yourself in a hotel room alone at the end of the day, and learning how to navigate that and cope with my own feelings around that has been invaluable. And I hope that meeting Aleks today, I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist, but hopefully we can connect on an even playing field, and I can just share some of my lessons with him, see what happens.
It's interesting because I usually interview people, and so I'm usually trying to extract stuff.
Right.
At least at the beginning of an interview, you're trying to figure out who the other person is. And actually, we don't really know that much about each other just yet. So how do you, how do you describe yourself in a way that feels comfortable and true to people?
Straight off the bat, this guy is interviewing me for sure.
Yeah.
How do I describe myself as something that feels comfortable and true? I love life. I love food. I love adventure. I'm passionate about traveling, performing, family. My time with the people that I love is everything. I was almost not here. I had a close call just a few years ago, and that drove that home even more for me to really go for what I want and what's important and what is important. The people that I love, doing what I love, and being able to do that at my own pace, and to not subscribe to the societal pressure of do this by this time, or this is the gig you should be taking for this amount of money. How about you, if I ask you that question?
It's cool that you have You have a pretty comprehensive list of things. I'm not sure I have that kind of list. I think maybe my priorities aren't as clear. Sometimes they are clear, but that doesn't really do anything for me. You know, I still end up like prioritizing work over spending time with people I love or something like this. I'm like pretty introverted, find it kind of stressful being in, you know, busy social settings and stuff.
Thanks for sharing that. Where does the thing come from where you feel like you can't stop?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes from this expectation in my family to take your work really seriously and not to settle for less, not to like to constantly be challenging yourself. Like I think both my parents in a really like incredible way would always do this, you know, like my dad, for example, would always encourage me to do things with my opposite hand, or like as a very young child, he would like expose me to like new ideas and like these. I don't have too many memories of my childhood, but these are the memories I have, and I feel like this has been something that's really stuck for me. But I find it to be super isolating in like a really clear way, because it means that I find it really hard to do things that people normally do. Like there'll be a TV show that comes out that everyone is watching and talking about, and I'll watch like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the first episode, and I'll be like, I should watch something else, like, or I should like do something else, you know, like why aren't I like reading? Why aren't I learning something? And I think it also means that I pull away from kind of like really basic, important social interactions, like going to a bar or something, you know. But like this is a really foolish way to think about anything, because obviously, as you said really early on, you know, like spending time with people is like the most incredible thing. Like that's how you learn. A lot of the time, you know, you don't learn by like, there's only so much you can learn from a textbook or whatever.
So that's our 4 participants and mentors. Over the next little while, they'll be meeting regularly and working on strategies to build connections.
There's always a need to strengthen the skills required to reach out, to put yourself out there and to build friendships.
Their stories are all very different, and they are much more complex than the few minutes you've heard here today. But over the next 5 episodes, you'll get to know them pretty well.
Hello, Tim.
Hello, Sean.
How are you? Nice to see your pretty face.
It's good to see you again.
What about things you're good at? We talk about skills.
I don't know my skills. Like that's the whole point of like self-discovery. What are my skills? What are my strengths?
It's been really hard because it involves like a pretty big change in my attitude towards how I spend my time.
Does that sound really abstract, or does that sound like something?
No, I think that sounds really exciting in a weird way. Yeah, I'd be keen to do that.
So, are you ready to maybe kick into some of this? You might as well.
If this show has raised any issues for you, there are always places to turn, such as Lifeline on 13 11 14, beyondblue.com.au, and reachout.com, which offers dedicated support for young people. For more information and tips to help if you're feeling lonely, visit wearelonely.com.au. We Are Lonely is produced as part of Medibank's 10-year commitment to addressing loneliness. I'm Gemma Spegg. This show was produced and edited by Liz Keane and Simon Portis from Headline Productions. Music is by Kenneth Lampel. Fact-checking is by Jess Chung, and our team psychologist is Alison Howarth. Our junior producer is Monica Vidgurite. Our team from Medibank include Karen Oldaker, Nigel Davis and Demi Michael. Project and production management by Rob Ranieri and Nick Randall from Ranieri & Co.